The fastest lap in Formula 1. It comes up at the top of the screen. DHL sponsor an award that's given to the driver that wins it every race weekend, but it means absolutely nothing. Well, nowadays anyway. You see, before the 2025 season, for a time, there was an extra point given to the driver that got the fastest lap during the race, provided they finished in the top 10. Without it giving the point, it's just a pointless award. Until now. Today we rewrite the story of the 2025 season. But it's not just that one point for the fastest lap, it's every single point. You don't have to finish in the top 10, you don't even have to finish the race at all. It's just the top 10 fastest laps throughout the race that get the points. So who comes out on top? A mixed conditions race for our season opener in Australia is exactly what we're looking for, where every single driver set their fastest lap on lap 43. As the track dried out slightly, everyone jumped onto the dry tyres before it started raining again, and no one could get a fastest lap than they managed then. And coming out on top in those tricky conditions was none other than Lando Norris, with a seismic 0.8 of a second gap over P2 man Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson? Despite putting it in the barriers later in the race, Liam managed to extract the pace when it mattered out of the car to pick up a magnificent P2 for Red Bull ahead of teammate Max Verstappen, who rounds out our opening race's podium. It's fair to say that if this had been the result in real life, the fate of his season would have been very different. But unfortunately, it can't change anything here. He's still going to get demoted after China, but great start to the season for him nonetheless. Gabriel Bortoleto, another to crash out in the main race, manages a beautiful P5 finish on his debut in Formula 1, as George Russell, who finished on the podium in third place in real life, is nowhere to be seen in our championship here. Our Drivers' Championship of course just reflects that opening race's result. However, in the Constructors' Championship, we can see that McLaren have started off with a slender advantage over Red Bull. The Chinese Grand Prix comes next, and Lando Norris makes it back-to-back wins to start off his season, with just a small lead over Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri, just 600ths covering our top three. The big story here though is that Lewis Hamilton was disqualified from the race win. He was 0.4 quicker than Norris in terms of fastest laps. However, after the race was disqualified due to his plank wear. What a start that would have been for his time in the Ferrari. Leclerc and Gasly, both disqualified also in this race, were out of the points anyway. With that disqualification, Esteban Ocon is promoted to a mighty P4 as George Russell gets his first points of the season, and the Racing Bulls get a lovely 6-7 finish. Bortoleto gets back-to-back points finishes, as does Liam Lawson. However, as we already know, it's not going to be enough for him to stay in that Red Bull seat, and Yuki Tsunoda is promoted in his place. Lando Norris is clear out front in the Drivers' Championship at this stage, with both Verstappen and Piastri gaining a place behind him, and further down, Ocon, Russell and Hadjar all gain big time. The bottom half looks like this at this stage, and in the Constructors' Championship, RB are up into P3, Haas are up into P5, and the Ferraris are languishing down in P7. At the Japanese Grand Prix, we have a brand new race winner in Formula 1 as Kimi Antonelli, just 3 rounds into his rookie season, picks up his first win in Formula 1. He's ahead of Oscar Piastri in P2, and Max Verstappen maintains his 100% podium record of this season in P3, with just 8 thousandths separating Oscar and Max. The Williams boys get a huge haul of points here, split by Lando Norris, who drops to P5 after his back-to-back race wins. Isaac Hadjar scores well again, and the Ferrari boys remain in the minor points places. Antonelli's win here shoots him up into P4 in the Drivers' Championship, as we've now got 3 drivers all equal on 14 points. In the bottom half, Carlos Sainz jumps up into P12, as we've got just 4 drivers yet to score this season, and in the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes are up into P3 and Williams up into P5. The Bahrain Grand Prix comes next and brings us the exact same podium as we had in real life, as Oscar Piastri becomes our 3rd different race winner out of the first 4 rounds this season, ahead of George Russell in P2 getting his first podium of the season, and Lando Norris rounds it out in P3. Charles Leclerc, after 1 point in 3 rounds, will be very glad to lead home a Ferrari 4-6 finish, and they're split by Max Verstappen in P5. And Alpine get some much needed points here, as Jack Doohan manages to score infinitely more points in this championship than he managed in real life. With the win here, Oscar Piastri is up into P2 in the championship, just 7 points off his teammate and rival Lando Norris. And further down, we've got all of George Russell, Lewis Hamilton and Isaac Hadjar gaining places. In the bottom half, both Charles Leclerc and Jack Doohan gain big time, as in the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari start to pull themselves out of the trenches. The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix comes next, and with it comes Lando Norris's third race win of the season already in just 5 rounds, ahead of Charles Leclerc in P2 picking up his and Ferrari's first podium of the season, and Oscar Piastri grabs P3. He's had 4 podiums in a row. Verstappen is P4, Kimi Antonelli picks up P5, and Carlos Sainz continues to score well for Williams in P6. Stroll gets Aston Martin's best finish so far this season, as he remains the lone point scorer for the team, and Liam Lawson picks up his first point since the switch to RB. Antonelli is now ahead of teammate George Russell as Charles Leclerc shoots up into P6, and Carlos Sainz enters the top half. In the bottom half, Lance Stroll moves past Jack Doohan, as only Alonso, Behrman and Hülkenberg are yet to score this season. And in the Constructors' Championship, McLaren already have doubled the points of P2, as Williams get past VCARB. Miami comes next, and Norris wins again. McLaren 1-2, the pair of them near enough 5/10 ahead of the rest of the pack. And Russell's P3 picking up his second podium of the season. Leclerc and Verstappen are P4 and P5 as Williams pick up a lovely double points finish. Lewis Hamilton picks up back-to-back P7 finishes and Yuki Tsunoda gets his first Red Bull point. Russell and Leclerc both move past Kimi Antonelli. Both Williams drivers make some gains as the bottom half of the Drivers' Championship generally stays the same and the Constructors' Championship does stay the same. And obviously after the Miami Grand Prix, Jack Doohan is dropped by Alpine. Very harsh in this reality, as he's only 3 points off of Pierre Gasly at this stage. The Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix comes next, and we've got no McLarens on the podium for the first time this season. Verstappen picks up his first win of the campaign, Lewis Hamilton gets his first Ferrari podium at one of their home tracks, and Alex Albon picks up Williams' first podium of the season in style. The McLarens have to settle for a 4-5 finish as Ollie Behrman further down scores his first points of the season in P8. Leclerc is now level on points with George Russell in the championship as Lewis Hamilton's P2 finish brings him up behind, and Alex Albon's podium here takes him above teammate Carlos Sainz. Hadjar is level with Lawson now as Behrman leaves Alonso, Hülkenberg and Colapinto as the only drivers yet to score this season. And in the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari managed to get themselves up into P3 after their dreadful start to the season as Haas moved past Sauber. At the Monaco Grand Prix, Lando Norris claims win number 5 of the season, with George Russell getting his second place of the season, and Kimi Antonelli is on the podium for the first time since his Japan Grand Prix win. The fastest lap championship very much benefiting the Mercedes team here, as in real life Russell finished 2 laps off the win and Kimi Antonelli 3 laps off the win, so to get a P2 and P3 here is obviously a lot better. Oscar Piastri picks up P4 ahead of season best equaling result for Carlos Sainz, and Leclerc picks up back-to-back P6s. Hamilton, Verstappen and Albon after their podiums last time out are P7, P8 and P9 here as Ollie Behrman manages back-to-back points finishes. Norris's lead in the Drivers' Championship is 39 points at this stage, as Antonelli's podium takes him past Lewis Hamilton, and in the bottom half we can see that Behrman has moved past Doohan. And in the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes' double podium finish here takes them back past Ferrari. The Spanish Grand Prix comes next, and with it comes our second McLaren 1-2 of the season, as Oscar Piastri picks up his second win of the season, with Max Verstappen in P3 nearly 1.3 seconds behind the win. Fortunately for the Dutchman, his outburst against George Russell doesn't affect him in this reality, and he picks up the podium ahead of George Russell in P4. Nico Hülkenberg gets a very tasty P6 for his first points finish of the season, and Lewis Hamilton has finished P7 4 out of the last 5 races. Pierre Gasly scores Alpine's first points since Bahrain, and Yuki Tsunoda has scored just 2 points since joining Red Bull, after scoring 14 points in the opening 2 rounds of the season with Racing Bulls. Hamilton moves past Antonelli, Hadjar is into the top half, and in the bottom half we can see that Nico Hülkenberg's P6 finish puts him up into P16. Only Alonso and Franco Colapinto haven't scored yet. Colapinto doesn't currently fit on the screen. And in the Constructors' Championship, Sauber get back past Haas. At the Canadian Grand Prix, as he did in real life, George Russell picks up his first race win of the season, and in our championship, he becomes our 5th different race winner. Lando Norris picks up P2 here, benefiting massively from not being affected by smashing into his teammate Oscar Piastri, who is in P3. Leclerc, Verstappen and Sainz are 4th through 6th, as Kimi Antonelli picks up a P7 here after his DNF last time out in Spain left him with no opportunity to put in a fast enough lap. Esteban Ocon in P8 gets his first points since his P4 finish in China, as Lance Stroll gets his 3rd points finish of the season, whilst Alonso has had none. Antonelli and Sainz gain on page 1, Esteban Ocon moves past Yuki Tsunoda on page 2, and in the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes sees P2. It's the Austrian Grand Prix for round 11 of the Fastest Lap Championship, where it's another McLaren 1-2, led by Oscar Piastri. There's not a lot we can do about it, but Lewis Hamilton in P3 does get his 2nd podium of the season for Ferrari. Charles Leclerc is P4, ensuring that the red team take home a huge haul of points, and Lance Stroll picks up a season best P5 finish. What a performance from the Canadian. George Russell split Gabriel Bortoleto and Nico Hülkenberg, who get Sauber's first double point finish of the season, as Esteban Ocon gets back-to-back points, and Franco Colapinto scores a point. In the Drivers' Championship, Lewis Hamilton's podium here takes him back past Kimi Antonelli, as in the bottom half, Gabriel Bortoleto has moved up into P11, and Franco Colapinto's 1 point here moves Fernando Alonso off of the Drivers' Championship standings, 0 points in 11 rounds. In the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari move up into P3 and are now just 6 points off of Mercedes in P2, as we've got Aston Martin getting past Alpine further down. Up next on the calendar, I thought we just had the Austrian Grand Prix. Oh wait, no, it's just the exact same podium as last time out, as Oscar Piastri picks up his 4th race win of the season, Lando Norris is in P2, making it yet another McLaren 1-2, and Lewis Hamilton gets back-to-back Ferrari podiums. Alex Albon gets a very lovely P4 finish after just 2 points across the last 4 rounds. Max Verstappen is P5 ahead of Fernando Alonso in P6, who finally scores a point this season and can shut me up with my Lance Stroll glazing. Pierre Gasly picks up 4 points here in his 4th point finish of the season, and Esteban Ocon grabs back-to-back P9. The gap at the top of the Drivers' Championship is now 21 points, as Lewis Hamilton is gaining on teammate Leclerc, and Albon moves past Sainz. In the bottom half, Gasly is up into P16, Alonso up into P18, and Franco Colapinto is pushed back off the standings, gone but not forgotten. And in the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari are up into P2. The Belgian Grand Prix kicks off the second half of the Fastest Lap Only Championship, where Kimi Antonelli picks up his 2nd race win of his rookie season, ahead of what can only be described as the 8th wonder of the world, a Nico Hülkenberg podium in P2. This is my 4th video on the 2025 season, and Nico Hülkenberg gets a podium in 3 out of 4 of them, which means that he clearly deserved to get one this season. Norris leads home a McLaren 3-4 finish, as Fernando Alonso scores very strongly in P5. And further down is a huge 4 points for Franco Colapinto, who 5x's his points tally for the whole season with that result. In the Drivers' Championship, Carlos Sainz moves back past teammate Alex Albon, as Nico Hülkenberg's podium surges him up into the top half. In the bottom half, Fernando Alonso moves past teammate Lance Stroll, as Franco Colapinto comes back onto the standings and pushes Jack Doohan off, and he will unfortunately never be seen again. And the Constructors' Championship sees Mercedes getting back past Ferrari, as Sauber and Aston Martin gain further back. The Hungarian Grand Prix brings us our closest winning margin of the entire season so far, as George Russell picks up P1, making it back-to-back Mercedes wins as he gets his 2nd of the season, ahead of Oscar Piastri in P2, and Max Verstappen in P3 ends his 4-race drought without a podium. Sainz gets a big P4 finish to further cement himself as the best of the rest this season. Nico Hülkenberg follows up his podium with a very strong P6, and Fernando Alonso continues to score strongly for Aston Martin. And in P10 we've got Liam Lawson, who scores just his second point since his demotion from Red Bull. Of course, he managed 20 points across 2 races at the opening rounds of the season. Page 1 of the Drivers' Championship sees the gap at the top down to just 16 points, and we've got 1 point separating the 2 Ferrari cars. On page 2, we can see that Liam Lawson and Fernando Alonso have both gained places, as P11 down to P15 remains incredibly close. And in the Constructors' Championship, everything remains the same. At the Dutch Grand Prix, it's another McLaren 1-2 as Oscar Piastri joins Lando Norris on 5 wins apiece this season, and in P3, Verstappen grabs a home race podium. However, the real star of the show here at the Dutch Grand Prix is Franco Colapinto, with an absolutely obscene P4 finish, far better than anything he or Alpine have managed this season, and incredible considering how hard points have been to come by for the bottom 5 teams this season. Hadjar's P5 finish is his best result of the season so far, and Fernando Alonso gets back-to-back P8s. The gap at the top is down to just 9 points as Antonelli joins the battle for P5, and in the bottom half, Fernando Alonso and Franco Colapinto both gain places. And in the Constructors' Championship, Red Bull are up into P3 and Alpine drag themselves off the bottom of the championship. Monza comes next and Lando Norris picks up his first win since the Monaco Grand Prix. Ahead of Max Verstappen in P2 and Oscar Piastri in P3, the pair have been on the podium for the last 3 rounds on the bounce. Charles Leclerc, after 5 points across the last 4 rounds, gets a much needed P4 finish here, as behind him the 2 Williams are split by Lewis Hamilton. And further back, the 2 Mercedes cars are split by Oliver Bearman, who scores his first points since the Monaco Grand Prix. Lando Norris extends his championship advantage to 19 points at this stage, as all of the championships up and down the board stay the same after the round in Monza. 3rd in the Netherlands, 2nd at Monza, and the race win here in Baku for Max Verstappen, who picks up just his 2nd race win of the entire season at round 17. Russell picks up P2 behind him, but P3 goes to Isaac Hadjar, who despite the change in format still manages a podium in his rookie season. A P4 for Carlos Sainz equals his best result of the season, as Lando Norris drops to P8 and Oscar Piastri completely out of the points for just the 2nd McLaren-less podium of the entire season. In the Drivers' Championship, a P5 finish for Lewis Hamilton here sees him above Charles Leclerc, as Isaac Hadjar's podium rises him on to the first page. The bottom half of the standings remain the same, and in the Constructors' Championship, VCARB move past Sauber. Singapore is next for round 18 of the Fastest Lap Championship, where we've surely got the best podium of the season so far. P1 goes to Lewis Hamilton, who was driving so quickly towards the end of the race that his brakes literally set fire. But behind him is my GOAT, Pierre Gasly, who picks up a P2 finish for the literal tractor team, and the icing on top, Carlos Sainz gets his first Williams podium in P3. It doesn't get any better than this. Antonelli is P4 ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, picking up a mighty P5 finish to re-enter the points, and Liam Lawson picks up his best result of the entire season since the opening round. This sees Antonelli overtaking Charles Leclerc in the top half of the Drivers' Championship, and in the bottom half we can see that Gasly's podium shoots him up into P12. And in the Constructors' Championship, despite 2 back-to-back podiumless rounds, McLaren managed to secure the championship with 6 rounds left to go. Also, Ferrari get past Red Bull, as both Sauber and Alpine gain a place. The US Grand Prix brings Kimi Antonelli his 3rd race win of the season, ahead of Lando Norris returning to the podium in P2, and Max Verstappen rounds us out in P3. Russell is P4, making it a huge haul of points for Mercedes, as Sauber get a rare double points finish, and Oscar Piastri is all the way down in P10. In the Drivers' Championship, Kimi Antonelli's win here takes him to just 3 points behind Lewis Hamilton as Nico Hülkenberg re-enters the top half. On page 2, Gabriel Bortoleto is up into P13, just 1 point off of Pierre Gasly, and in the Constructors' Championship, everything remains the same. The Mexican Grand Prix is up next, and with it comes George Russell's third race win of the season to equal his teammates' tally. But behind him in P2, with 2 podiums in 3 races, is Carlos Sainz with his best result of the season. Oscar Piastri is also back on the podium in P3 after a 3-race drought. P4 goes to Alex Albon, cementing a very strong weekend for Williams, with Lance Stroll coming home in P5, the first Aston Martin driver to score in the last 4 rounds, and he himself hasn't scored since his P5 in Austria. Behrman gets his best result so far in P7, and Lando Norris gets his joint worst result so far in P8. In the Drivers' Championship, Lewis Hamilton pulls away slightly from Kimi Antonelli as Carlos Sainz is now just 3 points behind ex-teammate Charles Leclerc. And on page 2, Lance Stroll is now ahead of teammate Fernando Alonso based on having more P5 finishes this season, and we've got a 3-way tie on 26 points. In the Constructors' Championship, everything does remain the same. However, Williams hitting over 200 points in this championship is incredibly impressive. The Brazilian Grand Prix sees Williams' impressiveness take yet another step up, as Alex Albon becomes our 7th different race winner this season, and Max Verstappen comes home in P2, with Oscar Piastri getting back-to-back P3s. P19 and P18 in the Drivers' Championship are P4 and P5 in the race here, as Yuki Tsunoda gets his first points finish since the Spanish Grand Prix, and it's also his best result of the entire season, and Franco Colapinto gets a mighty fine P5 finish for Alpine. Lando Norris is only in P6, and Aston Martin get their first double points finish of the entire season. There's a 20-point gap at the top of the Drivers' Championship with just 3 rounds left to go, as both Williams are now right behind Charles Leclerc. In the bottom half, Lance Stroll is up into P12, as both Tsunoda and Colapinto's big results here move them up massively in the championship. And with just 6 points covering P12 down to P18, it's anyone's game at the back. And in the Constructors' Championship, Ferrari scoring 0 points across the Brazilian Grand Prix weekend sees Red Bull charging past them. At the Las Vegas Grand Prix, Max Verstappen takes home his 3rd race win of the season, taking him level with both Mercedes drivers on 3 wins apiece for the entire year. In P2, just about 2/3 of a second back is Kimi Antonelli, and Charles Leclerc picks up just his 2nd podium of the entire year in P3. The Haas's have an absolutely incredible result here. P5 and P7, considering how bad they've been all season, is massive, and Nico Hülkenberg gets some crucial points in his battle with Isaac Hadjar for P10. Obviously, the big elephant in the room here is the McLaren double disqualification. They would have had a 2-3 finish here, but of course, they get nothing. Antonelli's P2 finish here takes him above Lewis Hamilton in the Drivers' Championship by a couple of points, and in the bottom half, with both Haas's scoring strongly here, there's just 8 points covering 12th down to 20th now. And in the Constructors' Championship, everything remains the same. In Qatar, the McLarens return to form as they get their first 1-2 finish in 7 rounds, with Oscar Piastri picking up the win, Lando Norris in P2, and just 1/1000th back in P3 is George Russell, who gets his 8th podium of the year. Aston Martin are definitely the team of the weekend though. They get a huge double points finish, and Lance Stroll gets his best result of the season in P4. This means that heading into the final round of the season, there's just a 13-point gap at the top of the Drivers' Championship, and Carlos Sainz has moved past Charles Leclerc. Page 2 sees Fernando Alonso up 4 to P13, and Liam Lawson moves past Franco Colapinto. And in the Constructors' Championship, Aston Martin's huge 18 points here takes them up into P7. And in our final race of the entire fastest lap only championship of 2025, Charles Leclerc picks up his first and only race win of the season, heading the 2 McLarens. Hülkenberg gets a magnificent P4, Stroll continues his strong end of season form, and even Alpine get a cheeky double points finish. Which means Lando Norris manages to secure the World Drivers' Championship, just a 10-point gap over Oscar Piastri, his teammate in P2, and this is how the final Drivers' Championship looked, with Leclerc's final race heroics allowing him to pip Hamilton by just 1 point at the end. As the bottom half looks like this, with Lance Stroll up into P11 and the Alpines grabbing P13 and 14. The Constructors' Championship ended the season like this, and if you've enjoyed this alternate format to the 2025 season, then why not check out this one? I took the practice sessions of every race across the entire season and gave them race points. Click here to find out what happens.